friends, Kim from Stamping Imperfection. Thank you for joining me today. I am playing with some goodies from the December Hedgehog Hollow kit. I haven't received my January kit yet, and honestly, I have not had time to play with this December one, and I feel like this is a really great one for January. You can see it's got snowflakes, it's got two frames. One is made of like a pine branch, like foliage theme. The diamond one is all about tulips, and I love them because they'll frame your sentiment. And I have a second stamp set that was in the kit that is all sentiments, and most of them will fit inside there. Probably all of them will inside that little frame with a little modification. So I've got a piece of watercolor paper here, and when I have the pine boughs or, like a pine tree type stamp, one of the things I really like to do with it is a watercolor effect. So I'm pulling out my favorite green from Maker Forte. This is their Color Hive ink line, and I'm pulling out Grand Canyon. There's one pine cone there, and I'm just dabbing it on. I'm not even being careful. And then I'm going to dab on the green. So this is the Everglades. I always want to call this something other than Everglades. So I'm making sure I have it all inked up, and I'm using my Mr. Perfect and spritzing it with water, and then just pressing it onto that watercolor paper. And I'm giving it some time to actually soak in, and it has a very watercolor effect. Now I've got a lot of water there, so I'm putting that on a board to set aside, and I love the way it kind of blurs some of the lines. For the second one, I wanted to use the daffodil frame. This is a nice diamond shaped frame, and I am using the Color Hive Fog ink. It's a very light gray. I kind of want to go for almost a no line effect. I do not love doing the no line effect because most of the time I can't see the light ink. So I did stamp that twice, and I feel like I come pretty close to a no line coloring effect. And so I'm going to do this one immediately. You could use your inks and with a dry or just damp paintbrush, you could add the color with a damp paintbrush using just your dye-based inks if you have them. I'm going to use my Copics. For the yellow, I pulled out Y38, and it's almost an orangey yellow. So I'm putting this toward the base of the center of the tulip on all the petals of the tulip that go around that central bell piece, and I'm putting it on the inside of the bell right down in the center. So I'm just adding it to each petal and places where I think it should be darkest. So now I have Y35, and I'm just going to start blending out that Y38. And I don't show this on the video, but later I do come back and add a Y15 after this one, because in the video I go straight to Y11, and I didn't feel like I got a nice enough blend between the Y35 and the Y11. So I went back and added a little Y15, and that actually gave me a nice blend for the yellow. So I'm doing it pretty quickly. I'm not being fussy about it. Like you can tell, I'm not being fussy at all. And I'm making an effort to cover up the gray lines, and it just kind of goes away. For the most part, it kind of goes away. And I just really like the way this looks. So this is pretty quick and easy. This is like the flowers are so small and the greens are so small that you can't really do a fussy job. So you just want to get some different, like you could color these all one color if you wanted to, stamp it in a color of ink and just leave it without any color. That looks nice too. So I'm pulling out two different sets of greens, YG67, YG63, and YG61. And now that I'm looking at it, I kept wondering why the YG63 was not blending very well. And in my hand, I'm holding the markers. I pulled out YG93. You want to use YG63. And I also pulled out G16, G14, and G12. And I'm using those for the little like oval leaves in there. And then the YG greens I'm using for the really leafy ones, the ones that look like spider plants, and they have the long skinny leaves. I really like that those leaves are nice and long and skinny. So I always start with my dark color toward the base of the plants, and then I blend my medium to my light. And sometimes I'll go back through and do that again. Like I might do it twice if I don't feel like I'm getting a nice enough blend. But these spots are super small, and I did go back a second time just to do better flicks with the darkest color. And then I blended it a little bit with the other two colors. But again, I tried to just keep this really easy. There are some days that I love fussing when I color or watercolor. Then there are other days where I just want to make it quick and easy. It doesn't need to be fussy. I just want to get some color on the paper because it doesn't have to be perfect. And nobody's going to notice really if it isn't. Although my sister would notice. I guarantee she would notice. But here I'm just adding a few more flicks of the dark. And this is one of my go-to color combinations, by the way, the YG 67, 63, and 61. It's perfect for grass. So I'm constantly pulling this out. I can't believe these haven't run out of ink. Knock on wood, right? The moment I say it, it will happen. So I just have now the rounder or oval leaves. They're almost in like a frond. And I'm just, again, I'm putting the dark toward at the base of each leaf by the stem, and then I'll do my medium and my light. And I love this color combination because G16 is a really pretty bluish green, and then G14 is a yellow green, and G12 is almost like they call it sea green, but it's almost like a minty green, but it's light enough that it really blends the other two colors very nicely. And this is one of my favorite. I don't know why. It's just, I find the colors very striking. And I like when I'm doing like florals to have a variety of greens, or I like to add some yellow to my green. A lot of times. I didn't do that here, but I really do like to add some yellow. And sometimes I even like to add a little blue. And that looks really pretty too, if you put a little blue in them. So the Hedgehog Hello Kits are a monthly subscription box kit. And this month's kit came with 2 stamp sets. It came with an extra little blender brush, and it came with 4 stencils. And I'm going to use one of the stencils today because it is a layered stencil, and all 4 parts are on one stencil. And the flower is so pretty, and it's so easy to do. So that is my coloring. I'm adding just a little bit of this orange in the very center of those tulips, and I decided I want to put a little brown on top of it too. So I pulled out, and for the orange, by the way, I'll use YR15, and I pulled out E27 to just add a little bit of brown. And I'm going to take my I have a journaling pen here with a nice fine tip. This is a 0.5 millimeter tip, and it's perfect to go over this frame. So I just want to darken the frame up and like make sure it really gets the edges of the florals there. Now I didn't do this on the watercolor one, but you could if you wanted to. So I'm just touching things up and being a little fussy, making sure I've got everything all colored in. Like, I love the fog for a no line coloring effect, but it's light. It's a perfect background and perfect ink to use for a background stamp. But I do really have trouble here. Like, I need the light to be really good. So I'm using my anti-static powder tool here, and I'm going to heat emboss the sentiment. And there's a lot of sentiments here. I consider hugs, I consider thanks, I consider greetings. I chose love. I thought it was really pretty. And it's almost February, so I might as well have a couple of non-Valentine-y love cards in my stash in case I need them. And I'm going to go ahead and use some, here's my clear embossing ink from Maker Forte. And I am going to do this twice because I was having trouble again seeing if the whole thing got stamped. So I just did it twice, even though this is regular white cardstock, because I used my Copics. So I'm just adding that, and I'm going to heat set it. And I flicked a little too hard the first time, so I put a little bit more embossing powder on. And you could use whatever color you want. Maker Forte has some great embossing powder colors, so that's fun. I love that they're coming out with embossing powders now. And I'm pulling out that one that on the watercolor paper that I spritzed with water. It's nice and dry now, so I'm going to go ahead and put a sentiment on the inside of that. So I pulled out that second stamp set that came in the kit, and it's just packed with sentiments I can use all year long. But there's one that says stay cozy, because if you're going to use the whole pine frame for a card to send in January or February, and I certainly think it's appropriate to use in January and February because it's still wintry. I mean, even Florida's cold, not as cold as the Northeast or the Midwest, but it's chilly, and for Florida anyway. So I think this is perfectly appropriate, and I'm using the stay cozy sentiment, so I think this will be actually fun. And these are, like, I considered leaving these as single layer cards and just attaching the panels to a piece, like a white card base. And I'm still going to use white card bases, but I decided to use some pretty colorful cardstocks to create a mat just peeking around below that card front. So I'm just cleaning up. I try to always keep my stuff clean so I don't transfer ink from one thing to another. And so I'm just heat setting that second one, and I like the way these turned out. The cards feel very clean and simple because I didn't do any splatter. I didn't do any background stuff. You know, there's all kinds of things you could do the background. So since I heat embossed them, I did put my clear blocks on top and weight them down a little bit so that they would flatten. I could actually run them through my laminator, but I was feeling a little bit lazy about getting that laminator out. So I just let these sit for a while. And then this is the stencil one. So this is the third card front. And I'm telling you, there's so much more to play with in this kit. I could make 10 single layer cards like this. So I'm pulling out the neon lights ink and I'm just adding it. Now I have my stencil tipped a little bit because you can see I did a practice one just to see how the stencil went together. Off to the right there, I used bubblegum and coral keys. That would be a no color combination for me. The coral keys looks orange next to the bubblegum. But this is divided into 4, and each one is separated by like a raised line on the stencil. So I'm just using my sanded eraser here to get off any excess ink. But those raised lines that kind of break the stencil up into like a grid of 4, I put notice that where I'm lining it up it's right above my finger there on the right hand side of the card. I put a pencil mark there with the first stencil, but the stencil, I didn't really need to do this. The stencil lines up so beautifully. I am being careful because I did not mask off the edges of the stencil. So you might want to do that because this, the image goes pretty close to the edge of the stencil, and I wouldn't have needed my sanded eraser if I had been more careful. Now notice when I'm putting the ink down here, I'm putting heavy ink on the inside of the petals where I want it to be darkest, and that was blue raspberry, by the way. Pretty color combination. And now I'm pulling out blue moon. I'm going to use that for the leaves. I used Welsh Dragon on the other sample that I did. Or no, that was Palm Tree. The blue moon is really pretty. Like it's a nice bluey green. So now I'm doing the center of that stencil, and I decided to use the grape because I haven't used this grape on anything, and I like purple and blue together. They're analogous colors next to each other on the color wheel. And again, I'm going to pull that eraser back out just to make sure I got everything done. So I'm going to put links to the things I can link here. This Hedgehog Hollow kit is sold out, but I feel confident you have stuff in your stash you could actually make simple cards like this with. And I put Crown Jewel Gems. These are the Yellowstone, and that's English mustard yellow paper, and I think the blue is the blue raspberry. So please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed. I would love to have you subscribe, and click that bell so you get notifications every time I upload a new video. Have a wonderful day.